Hi everyone, I'm Therese, and today we're speaking about IELTS Writing Task 1, describing a bar chart. And this type of visual comes up quite a lot in the IELTS exam, so it's important to be ready to understand what a bar chart is and how to describe it in the correct way and in the way that is expected by the IELTS examiner. So here's an example of a bar chart here. This is what it looks like. Obviously when you see the bars, you know it's a bar chart. And at the top of the bar chart, you'll see the title. So this says Student Expenditure on Learning Resources in 2019. So now we know exactly what the topic is of the bar chart. It's about the amount of money spent by students on learning resources, materials, in 2019. And if we take a look now at the axes of the graph, we aim to understand it. So on the left side, we see the figures between 0 and 45. And on the title, it says amounts of millions in US dollars. So now we know that students spent between 0 and 45 million US dollars on learning materials in 2019. So in a period of 1 year, right? And then on the horizontal axis, we can see 4 products: books, tutorials, e-learning, and college courses. In blue and in pink. So blue is the United States, USA, and pink is Canada. So we know that these are the 4 products that students spent their money on in 2019. So now we know what the axes mean. We know what the information is. Let's take a look at the data in the bar chart. So if we take a look at the pink colors, we can see what the highest amount of money was spent on college courses by pink, that's by Canada, and we see what the least amount of money was spent, which was blue, by the United States. So we know now what the most was, and we know now what the least was. And if we see what is equal, e-learning and books, that these amounts were equal. These were the same. So when you look at the data in your bar chart, try to understand quickly what was the most, what was the least, what was equal, so that when you write your text, you can make these comparatives and you can make these similarities. So that's really the purpose of the bar chart, of the text of your bar chart, is to write what was similar, what was different, to make those comparatives. And that's what we're going to look at a little bit further in this video, on how to write the overview and how to write the main body paragraphs. So let's take a closer look now at how to write the essay in a coherent way. So if we take a look at the format for IELTS Writing Task 1, describing a bar chart, we need to have a clear introduction, about 2 sentences, an overview, which is about 3 sentences, main body paragraph 1, main body paragraph 2, and that's it. There's no conclusion, no opinion. That's really not necessary for this type of task, because after all, this is not an essay. This is a descriptive, factual text. So you don't need to give any conclusions. And what's really important to remember also is to include your overview, because your overview is your summary of the bar chart. And without an overview, you probably will get a score of 4 in IELTS. So in order to achieve that higher score, 6+, you must include your overview. And another thing to note is that you don't need to include any numbers or data in the overview. All of that will come later in main body paragraph 1 and 2. So let's take a look at the introduction of your text. So you'll see the opening statement in your in the IELTS Writing Task 1. So in this case, the statement is the chart shows students' expenditure on learning resources in 2 countries in 2019. And what we're going to do is we're basically just going to paraphrase the opening statement, and that will be your introduction. So I've written the chart illustrates the amount of money spent by learners on educational resources in 2 countries, the USA and Canada, in 2019. The amounts were measured in US dollars. So as you can see, what I've written here is exactly the same meaning as the opening statement, but I've just turned things around. Instead of the word show, I've put illustrate. Instead of the expenditure on learning resources, I've put the amount of money spent on educational resources, and I've added learners instead of students. The main difference is that I've added information about the countries, the USA and Canada, and the year, because you want to give the reader all the facts, all the information, the place, the year, the currency, or the units that were measured. So in that intro, you're providing all the information in a very condensed form, and it is a paraphrase of the opening statement. So yes, you do need to know a certain amount of vocabulary to add synonyms. So it's useful to have those terms like illustrate that will help you in every introduction that you write. Okay, let's turn now to the overview. What is the overview? It is the summary of the graph itself. It's necessary for the IELTS exam. You must write an overview, and the overview includes all of the key features of the bar chart, but not in numerical detail. So in this case, do you remember what are the key features? Well, we have the 2 countries, Canada and the United States. We have the year 2019, and the other key features are the most money spent and the least money spent. So the most money was spent on college tutorials, the least money was spent, the most money was spent on college courses, the least money was spent on tutorials. So that is our key information, and that's what we want to include in the overview. So if we put that together in writing, let's start with a nice linker. And I think overall is a perfect linker for an overview because it summarizes, it signifies that we're going to resume, we're going to summarize the information. So overall, Canadian students spent more than American students on educational resources. Both the USA and Canada spent the most money on college courses, while the least amount of money was spent by both countries on tutorials. So here I've summed up the main ideas, which country spent more than the other on educational resources, and what the most and least amount of money was spent on. So it's very condensed. I've put it into only 2 sentences, but that's all you really need to do. In terms of grammar, it's useful to use those comparative and superlative forms, the most and the least, more than, and also I've used 1 passive form, and the use of the passive is useful in the in writing tasks 1, not only in bar chart, but in some of the other visuals that we'll be looking at in these videos. So aim to use some superlative, some comparative, and the use of the passive. So let's move on to the main body paragraphs. So you should write 2 body paragraphs, and for each paragraph, we need to group our information.
So there are two options in this particular graph. We could group the information based on the country, the United States and Canada, or we could group the information based on product. Now, in this case, I've decided to group the information based on product. So I've divided the products into books and tutorials, and the other products, e-learning and college courses. Now, again, you don't have to do it that way. You could do it the other way, but I've just decided to do it this way. So in main body paragraph 1, I've written about books and tutorials. Main body paragraph 2, I've written about e-learning and college courses. So that's how I've grouped the information. So let's take a look at how we can write paragraph 1. So in paragraph 1, regarding books, Canada spent more than $30 million compared to around $20 million spent by the United States. In terms of tutorials, Canadians spent almost $20 million in contrast to the Americans, who spent $7 million. So as you can see, I've started with a nice linker regarding books, the first product, and then I've compared Canada with the United States. And in the second sentence, I've used another linker, in terms of, and I've compared Canadians with Americans again. And in this case, I've compared the actual amounts. So 30 million compared with 20 million, and second sentence 20 million compared with 7 million. So as you can see, in main body paragraph 1, I've given a lot more detail. I've given numbers, figures, and I've made 2 comparisons. So that's really the idea of main body paragraphs 1 and 2. Make your comparisons or similarities and use your linkers. These are cohesive devices that will help you increase your score. You'll get a better score in IELTS if you do that. So again, very factual, very simple. So the linking terms, comparative forms, and the use of the passive. Now let's take a look at main body paragraph 2. The same idea. In relation to e-learning, Canada spent slightly over $20 million, whereas the United States spent just under $10 million. Regarding college courses, the Canadians and Americans spent the most money, more than $40 million and $25 million respectively. So in this second body paragraph, I'm again using a nice linker to begin in relation to e-learning, and then I make that comparison between Canada and the US. In the second sentence, I do the same thing. I use a linker to refer to the final product, college courses, and I make a comparison. But in this case, we say that the Canadians and Americans spent the most money. So, and then I give the figures, $40 million and $25 million respectively. Now, respectively means in order. So the Canadians spent $40 million and the Americans spent $25 million. So make sure you give the numbers to support your statement. If you don't give your numbers, you will not get a good score in IELTS. You will be marked down. So again, very important to back up your statement with examples, with the facts, with the data. And so regarding that grammar, range, and accuracy, using your linking terms, very useful to introduce your categories, and using the adverbs to describe the movement. So slightly over, just under, using nice comparatives to compare whereas and superlatives. So these are all really useful grammar that you can use over and over and over again as you practice bar charts. And yeah, so that's very useful. So just a quick revision of lexical resource. Paraphrase. Practice your paraphrase. Practice your use of synonyms. Think about other words that you can use for show. Show can be used as illustrate. In this case, the word students, you can use learners. Amount of money, expenditure. Educational resources, learning resources. So expand your range of language. I know you're probably thinking, well, how can I do that? The best way to improve your vocabulary is by reading. Read other examples of IELTS texts and essays. Read, read, read. This will really help you. And then practice, practice, practice. That is the best technique. In terms of task achievement, remember, task achievement is 25% of writing task 1. And so in order to reach task achievement, make sure you cover the key features of the graph. So cover all of the main ideas in the overview and go into detail in main body paragraph 1 and 2. And of course, again, provide numbers to support your facts, because if you don't, you'll remain at span score 4 or 5 if you don't give the data to back up your main ideas. So in terms of cohesion and coherence, follow the format. Maintain a clear introduction, a nice overview, about 2 to 3 sentences, main body paragraph 1, main body paragraph 2, no conclusion. That's it. A very clear format. And again, group your information. Make sure that each paragraph covers a specific point. Don't convolute your information. Just keep it clear and keep it simple. And that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, everybody, and good luck with writing your bar chart.